Hey, welcome back to my channel. It's Emma, and today I'm doing my December wrap-up. So I read 13 books in the month of December, and they were all audiobooks. I don't like audiobooks, but once again, I have a concussion. I feel like I have to say this every time, but I did listen to them all because I can't read, so that is how I just kind of zoomed my way through 13 books this month. I read a lot of classics and a lot of YA, and I guess without further ado, let's just jump into it. So the first book I read in December was The Gentleman's Guide to Vice and Virtue by Mackenzie Lee. I picked this one up because I saw a whole bunch of people were just raving about it on Goodreads, and it sounded like the best thing ever. Like a YA set in 17 something, as the book says, is just so great. I started it and was instantly just so like into it. Mackenzie Lee's writing is so funny and just so perfect, and her details about everything is just so, like, it's so fun. In The Gentleman's Guide, we are following Montgomery, who is the son of a very rich lord, and he probably has the baddest case of daddy issues that I've ever seen in a book. His father is just the worst sort of person imaginable, and to top matters off, Montgomery is in love with his best friend, Percy. Obviously, in this year, and even today, a lot of people are just not cool with that, so Montgomery is trying to hide this, cover it up. Percy doesn't know. So when him and Percy are finally going on their tour of the continent, because they live in England, Montgomery's father sits him down and says that if he messes up in any way, shape, or form or embarrasses him on this tour, that he basically is not going to have a home to come back to, and that his father is going to disown him. On this tour of the continent, he is forced to take his sister along with him, along with this other chaperone man whom his father has assigned. One of their first stops is Versailles in France, and at this party at the palace, Montgomery steals this box because he just likes to take things and thought it was of no consequence. But as they're kind of moving away from France, they are actually stopped on the road by a group of highway robbers, highwaymen, and they are looking for the box that Montgomery took. So that is where the story takes off from. I was absolutely in love with the first half of this book. However, I felt like as it went on, it lost momentum, it lost my interest, and I didn't even care about the ending. I feel like the whole part where they're stuck in Spain goes on forever and ever, and one thing that did keep me going was her writing. Like I said, it was just so funny, so witty, so clever, and Montgomery and Percy are obviously just a hilarious, wonderful couple, so I would really recommend it, and I gave it 3 stars. The next book that I have been wanting to read forever, and I thought December would be the perfect month to read it in, was The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. In this book, it is totally inspired by Russian folklore and Russian myth, and I was so into that. It starts on a dark, kind of blizzarding night in Russia, and we are following this young girl named Vasilisa who can actually see all of the characters and demons and just people from Russian folklore that no one else can see, and they're all around her house. For example, there's like an oven demon. I think he's called the Domovoy, and it's just so funny. It also deals a lot with the story of the Frost God, I don't know, Morozko I think his name is, and it was just really good. It was a lot slower than I was expecting, which is something that kind of put me off, and it was a lot more character focused and less action packed. However, I did really come to love Vasilisa and kind of get attached to everyone that kind of surrounded her Russian cottage life. The main conflict in this book is that a priest comes from one of the nearby Russian towns. He gets assigned to the church that is in Vasilisa's vicinity, and obviously he's a priest, so she doubly has to hide the fact that she can see all these demons and that she just talks to little demon boys all day. I gave it 3 stars. I really wanted to like it more than I did, but I still really just loved it for like the cold winter nights here as well. It was fun reading it, so I will probably continue this series too when I have time for that. I decided to pick up the book that is named after me. Just kidding, it's not, but it's Emma by Jane Austen. I've never read this before, but I thought it was finally time, and I thought it was cool too because Emma in this book is 21 and I'm 21, even though someone told me the other day I look like I'm 15, but that's okay. So in this book we are following our title character. She is obsessed with matchmaking. I feel like Emma is definitely kind of a YA set in the 1800s, which is really funny, but basically she's just made a match for her governess, and she thinks she's like so good at making people fall in love with each other and pairing people up. She thinks she's Cupid. So she gets this new friend named Harriet, and poor Harriet, Emma just wants to like match her up with all these people, but it keeps going terribly wrong. It's just she's kind of naive and blind to everything that's really going on in her life and people who actually care about her or are just using using her, and it's just very typical Jane Austen kind of social commentary, wittiness, and in the end everything works out in kind of a romantic comedy-esque fashion. I didn't really enjoy it as much as other Jane Austen books I read. I gave it 3 stars. There's definitely just this one lady in here, I really forget her name because I think I've repressed it, but she prattles on for pages and pages at a time about absolutely nothing, and I know that's the point and it's supposed to be hilarious, but it was honestly just, I couldn't do it, especially on an audiobook, just this old lady talking and talking and talking about how to pick strawberries or something. I couldn't do it. But other than that, I did kind of enjoy it, and I definitely want to watch kind of a film version of it now. The next book that I read in December was finishing up the Queen of the Tearling series, which I've talked about so much on my channel now. I'm sorry I have to talk about it again, but I finished the last book, The Fate of the Tearling, and like I said, I cried. I can't speak highly enough of the series. It's my favorite series, probably my favorite book of the year, definitely one of my all-time favorite books now, which is speaking very, very high praise, and I absolutely love it. I love endings in books that really crush you. I love it when things don't work out because I think that's very true to life a lot of the time, and Erica Johnson in The Fate of the Tearling really just threw it all at you, and I was not ready for it, but I gave it 5 stars. The next book I listened to in December was Lady Chatterley's Lover by D.H. Lawrence. Like I said, I did get around to a lot of classics this month. Unfortunately, this was a bad one. I gave it 2 stars. Like I said, I think in my vlog, I've never met someone who enjoyed this book. We're following this 28-year-old girl named Constance, and she marries this man named Clifford, or Mr. Chatterley. They move to his little mansion in, I think it's in the Midlands in the UK, and he has just come back from war. He is paralyzed from the waist down. They can't have children or do anything, so she is just really depressed. She has all this kind of terrible anxiety and emotion, and she hates where she is. She hates where she's living until their very conveniently hot gamekeeper, Oliver, starts to have an affair with her. That is what this book is. That is all that this book is about, basically. It's just so many sex scenes interspersed with really boring bits about their life in this mansion. Like I said, I gave it 2 stars. The sex scenes were not sexy in any way. There's like this one part where they decorate his place with flowers and like weave vines in there, and I literally laughed out loud for 5 minutes about that, but I was just really disappointed because there were a lot of like cool lines in here, and it started with like a very poetic prose introduction from D.H. Lawrence, which I really loved, but then from there it just absolutely careened down the hill and I couldn't stop it. Like, it even starts, "Ours is essentially a tragic age, so we refuse to take it tragically. The cataclysm has happened. We are among the ruins. We start to build up new little habitats to have new little hopes. It is rather hard work. There is now no smooth road into the future, but we go round or scramble over the obstacles. We've got to live, no matter how many skies have fallen." Like, hello, that was beautiful, and then the rest is just smut, so thanks D.H. Lawrence. The next book I read was actually one of my worst books of 2019, which is always fun. Unfortunately, that is 3 Dark Crowns by Kendara Blake. This was awful. I'm not gonna put it mildly. It was really bad. We are following 3 queens from 3 different perspectives. They're all sisters as well. They're triplets. And there's this prophecy and this kind of rule in this kingdom that whoever wins, they have to fight each other to the death. And whoever wins this battle, they become queen. And they're all kind of backed by different societies and people. So for example, we have a poisoner queen, an elementalist queen, and a naturalist queen. This sounded like a super cool premise. However, it was really badly written, really badly put together. No one had any depth at all. There was no character development. There was absolutely nothing. I was really just disappointed, and I gave it 1 star, and I know a lot of people were really sad about this series because 3 Dark Crowns promised to be really good, and then it absolutely was not. Thankfully, the next book that I picked up was a lot better, and that was The Amulet of Samarkand by Jonathan Stroud. This is a children's book in which we are following a Jinni named Bartimaeus, and he is 5,000 years old. He's been around the block quite a few thousand times, and he's been kind of the Jinni and the servant and the messenger and just someone who's done the will of pharaohs and kings and gods and people and magicians. So this book is about magicians. I think it's like present day-ish London, and we're following this 12-year-old boy named Nathaniel, and he's trying to get back at this older magician named Simon Lovelace who insulted him in front of a group of people and told him he was a really bad magician. Nathaniel himself is kind of a prodigy, although his master, and just everyone around him doesn't really see that. So Nathaniel summons Bartimaeus, which he should not be able to do at his age and skill level, but he does. And he tells Bartimaeus to go and steal something from Simon Lovelace. So he steals the Amulet of Samarkand, which was a big mistake because that is kind of the object that everyone wants. It protects the wearer, and just it's a very coveted thing in this magic world. So it follows everything that stems from that one day, from that one theft, and it's just really interesting. There's so much ancient history in here, so many references to languages and spells and alchemy and even math, and it was just really cool, and I love seeing that in a children's book. So definitely this one was 3.5 stars. I really liked it. The next audiobook I finished was a really big one, and I was buddy reading this with a whole bunch of people. Mary from A Cinnamon Please, Emma from Muggle Glamour, Ishi from Ishi Time, and the Starlight System from YouTube. So we were all buddy reading it. I think I'm actually the only person who finished it, which is kind of understandable because it was really long. It is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. So I've always wanted to read Tolstoy, and I'm so glad I finally let that happen in 2019. This was amazing. I gave it 4 stars. It is kind of slow at some parts, but I just really like his writing, and I really just like, I was so happy to get into it and read it and like let it be slow, because it was like a nice kind of lazy river type of slow where you're just content to be along for the ride. So we were following Anna and a whole bunch of other people. This cast is so big, it's humongous. There's so many people, and just like Tolstoy is so good at crafting such a huge kind of city of people. This book literally has thousands of people in it. But we're following Anna. She falls in love with Count Vronsky, which is a problem because she is married. We are also following Kitty, who falls in love with Count Vronsky as well. However, it doesn't work out for either of the girls with Count Vronsky. It's just so cool seeing how different the 4 people's relationship with each other is: Levin, Kitty, Anna, and Vronsky. And it was so good. The use of trains and kind of the discussion of Russian systems and Russian government and politics was really interesting. I've never read a Russian novel, so I loved it, and I would really recommend this. I can't wait to read more Russian novels. I recently got Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky, so I am very excited. I wish I could speak Russian. I only know one thing. I know 2 things in Russian, but one of them is really not polite. The only thing I know is "С днем рождения," which I think is happy birthday. I would really like to learn Russian though, I'm just saying. Then we have another classic. I don't know why December was the month for classics, but I suppose it just was. It is another Jane Austen book, and it is Northanger Abbey. This was a reread for me. I read it very many moons ago, so I decided it was time to give it another go, and I liked it a lot better the second time around. Mostly because I had read The Mysteries of Udolpho, which features a lot in this book, and made things make a lot more sense because it parodies the Gothic, and our main character, Catherine, is just determined to see Gothicness and horror everywhere she goes, which is quite comical. But we are following, like I said, Catherine as she's going on a little adventure to Bath, where she meets this very annoying girl, Isabella. She might like hold the title of the most annoying character I've ever read in books, which is quite the feat. But she makes friends with Isabella. Isabella coincidentally is fallen in love with her brother under the false pretense that Catherine and her brother are from a very rich family, which is obviously going to lead to some mishaps and mistakes and errors in judgment later on, which is very obviously Jane Austen-esque. Catherine herself actually falls in love with this other man, and eventually at the end of the book she gets taken to their house, Northanger Abbey. And once there, she thinks everything is just conspiring in a very Gothic way against her, which can we blame her? Because no, I feel like I would do the exact same thing if I went to an abbey or a castle or somewhere. I would just like see ghosts or be like, yeah, this place is haunted. But I gave it 3 stars, and I'm really glad I gave it another shot. The next book I read was a children's book of a retelling of Filipino myths, and it was really sweet and short, and I loved it. But it's called Lolani of the Distant Sea by Erin Andrada Kelly, and we follow Lolani, who's a 12-year-old girl. Her mother and her village live on the Filipino mythical island. Not mythical, but it's made up of San Lagita, and it's a very kind of male-dominated place. No one gives her any respect or any responsibility or thinks very much of her. She has two friends, but mostly everyone else just bullies her, and one day her mom pricks her finger as she's kind of weaving and she falls ill. She gets what they call weaver's disease. At the same time, for years and years, this island of San Lagita has been sending their strongest men, their strongest sailors, over to this mountain called Isa, where they believe everything good in life is and where they think they should just get to. Lolani, once she finds out that her mother is dying and her village is beset by droughts and famine, decides that she is going to get to Isa all on her own. So that is all I'm gonna say about it, but it was really good, really sweet, and I just always love learning about any culture's myths that I've never experienced before, so this was really good. A book that I was really excited to read was The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. This book ended up not really being what I was expecting. It was really, really slow as well. We're following a whole bunch of people, principally this one lady named Cora, and she is kind of just lost her husband to cancer, but kind of good riddance because he was not really a good person. But she travels, she's kind of looking for fossils, she wants to be an archaeologist or a geologist or one of those things. It is the late Victorian period, and she hears these rumors about the Essex Serpent, which is a serpent that is said to have reawakened from ancient times in Essex. So she travels to Old Winter, which is this very kind of barren, remote seaside town. She meets there with the town's priest, and they kind of start to fall in love with each other and start to have kind of a complicated relationship. And she is looking for the serpent. There's a lot of gothic elements to this book as well, but it really didn't do it for me. I thought it was going to be more action-packed or maybe just be more than it was. And I know that's kind of one of the pitfalls of the book, that it makes you think, and it wants to make you think that the Essex Serpent is more than what you think it is, and it's not really. So it just, I don't know, I was disappointed, but I can still see like it was really good. I know this book has won a lot of awards, so I would recommend it, but just go into it with kind of a grain of salt, because it's not what you, or at least it's not what I thought it was, but it was still okay. One of the last books I listened to in December was Grimm's Fairy Tales, compiled by the Brothers Grimm. I'd actually never gotten my hands on these, never listened to these, never properly read them, and it was really interesting, really cool. My favorite probably was Snow White, just because that story was so much darker and I loved it. I loved how the queen literally just ate people's hearts. That is great. But other than that, I just enjoyed it and it was fun listening to it. I got an audiobook where each little fairy tale was read by a different narrator, which made it really fun and interesting, so I just loved it, and I kind of want to get my own copy of it now. The last book I read in December was Norse Mythology by Neil Gaiman. I love this. I gave it 4 stars. Neil Gaiman's spin on the Norse myths was amazing. He literally made it so funny. He made Thor just this really stupid buff man, and Loki and Thor together, and the myths that they were in and the scenes that Neil Gaiman wrote about them were so funny. I loved it so much, and like I said about the Filipino myths, I just love any myth at all, so I'm so glad I got to read this, and I hope he writes some more myths about something, because these were so beautifully rewritten and retold, and I love the spin he put on things. My favorite myth was probably the one called Freya's Strange Wedding, where the king of the giants, I believe, steals Thor's hammer Mjolnir, and in order to get it back, he demands Freya as his bride to return the hammer. So the idea that they come up with is that Thor should dress up as Freya and go down and get married to this giant. And just, it is so funny, and like Loki's there too, and it was just amazing. So I really, really loved it. So that was my December wrap up. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm just really ready for 2020 to start. My booktube anniversary is coming up next month, which is exciting. It hasn't been a year yet, but almost. And yeah, I've just had such a good time recently with this channel, and it's been really good. So I hope you had a really great reading month in December, and yeah, I will see you in the next video. Ciao.